Hello, everyone. Welcome to the third episode of The Tale of Success featuring Dr. Narges Baniasadi. I am really excited that you guys are here today. I would give you all 2 minutes to relish with some Persian music, fill out the poll that you can see on this screen, and we will get started in about 2 minutes. Okay, I am going to talk about Iranian Students of California and introduce ISC to all of you. ISC is a student or is an organization run and led by students, both graduate students and undergraduate students. We have student organization representatives from 16 different campuses across California, both graduate students and undergraduate students. Our mission is to advance the academic and professional aspirations of Iranian heritage students in California. We do that through 3 different programs that encompasses community building, professional development, and a very unique speaker series program called The Tale of a Success. In The Tale of a Success, we feature very successful Iranian Americans who have been doing amazing in their careers, and we have interviews with them. Previously, we have hosted Ali Qudsi, the CEO and co-founder of Databricks. We have also hosted Kayvan Mohajer, the CEO and founder of SoundHound. And today we're hosting Narges Baniasadi, the professor at Stanford University, who's also the founder of the Emergence Program. If you would like to know more about our upcoming events, go ahead and visit our website that you can see the link over here, or follow all of our social media so you do not miss out on any of the amazing events that we're going to have in the future. Okay, I know that y'all are excited to hear from Dr. Narges and our host, Romina. I would like to have the honor to introduce her. Narges Baniasadi is the founder of the Emergence Program at Stanford University. She has led multiple initiatives and businesses in the intersection of technology and life sciences for over a decade. She was the CEO and founder of the Bina Technologies, a pioneering bioinformatics company. And currently she's the executive director of the Emergence Program at Stanford. I would like to introduce to you guys our host, Romina Mir, who is a graduate student at University of Southern California, and she's also the director of operations at ISC. I hope you guys enjoy this talk.
Thank you so much, Daria. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining our event today. Romina here. I'm ISC's operations director and also graduate students in biomedical data analytics at USC. We are very excited to start this third and final episode before ending 2021. We are incredibly proud to have Narges Baniasadi as our third speaker. Hi, Narges. We are pleased to have you today.
Hi, Romina. Thanks for having me. Hello, everyone.
Beautiful. We're pleased to have you today. It would be great to kick off the event by learning more about the Emergence Program that you have recently founded at Stanford University and its interesting approach to entrepreneurship.
Thank you. Sure. Before maybe we talk about me, I wanted to just thank ISC for inviting me and for organizing these events. I'm very impressed and very happy to see this community coming together. And the fact that you're also connecting multiple schools is very important and very impactful. You know, during my studies in grad school, also, I was very involved in student organization, PSA at Stanford. And then now I'm also working with the alumni of Stanford Association to bring them together these type of activities are really impactful in helping the community to grow and flourish, as well as it's very fun. So I just a big shout out to all of you guys, and an invitation for people to get involved and help out and hopefully grow the type of activities you are doing. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it means a lot to hearing this from you, that we actually share the same cause.
Yes, thank you. Talking about Emergence, Emergence is a new initiative that I started at Stanford University. It is new, it's a few months old now, and starting out of the bioengineering department at Stanford. The goal is to really inspire, educate, and support students to start very purpose-driven companies, especially in the fields related to societal health, as well as planet health and equality. And the reason I started Emergence is very much related to my own experience. I've been a student and then tech founder in Silicon Valley, and then later an executive. And I observed what is missing in the ecosystem. And I decided to go back and help students to really look at entrepreneurship in a different way, in a way that both can help them build very successful, profitable organizations, but also target very important problems and challenges that we are facing in the society. And it will be much more fun and fulfilling for them and anyone involved. So that is in high level what we do. I teach at Stanford coursework on these areas, and we are also working with students to have a lot of co-curricular activities like seminar series, pitch nights, to just bring forward the ideas the students are working on, and then connecting them to resources that can help them take their ideas forward, whether it is mentorship or partnerships with industry or different organizations outside campus, as well as funding resources and so on. So it's a lot of ecosystem building, as well as education and providing that resources that students need to take their ideas forward.
Beautiful. While I would love to learn more about the Emergence program itself, as well as your previous company, Bina Technologies, let's first take a trip down the memory lane. Narges, can you please tell us a little bit about when you were in Iran and any interesting experience you had there?
Oh, many interesting experiences. It's hard to pick one or two. So I grew up in Iran. I was born in the year that Iran-Iraq war started, and a couple of years after the revolution. So you can imagine they have been very eventful years. I grew up in a family. They were my parents both were entrepreneurial, but also they were involved with a lot of social activities in nonprofits, charities, but even kind of political activism. So that sometimes could get us into trouble. So it has been quite eventful, but also, very much formational. And I'm very happy that I grew up in Iran, and I went to University of Tehran, and after that I came here to grad school. So yes, if I want to think about some of the things that stand out for me, I remember I went to a very good secondary school, Rahnamai in Iran. We had this amazing headmaster in the school, Ms. Zendanam, that she really designed the school in a way that gives a lot of confidence to the students, all the teenage girls, and she would help us even, decide different things for a classroom, or even decide what would be the next building the school will rent. That would be, that was very formational, and I think transformational for many students in that school.
Yeah, especially I guess as a woman, you don't feel that have a voice, but in that scenario,
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, I think that was one of the very key events in my life, going to that school. That eventually that school got closed, but I spent 4 years there, and that was very helpful. Of course, going to university was very fun and exciting experience. When the year that I had the national exam, the concours, was when the Hijdah happened. That was in Farsi years, Iranian calendar 1378, when there was students were protesting for some like freedom and rights of journalism, and then that protest got kind of raided, and we didn't know if we can even do the concours or not because it happened in that week. So it was quite stressful. And then when I went to university eventually, University of Tehran is a very active environment. Not only like we did the studies, but there were a lot of different social activities we would get involved in. And sometimes, we would go to these protests and we would miss classes for many days in a row.
Yeah, I guess despite all those events that was happening at the time, in early 2000, you got an amazing ranking in Iran's national entrance exam. And you decided to study electrical and computer engineering in University of Tehran. Why did you choose ECE?
Good question. I think in Iran, students do not have a lot of choices. Like you need to choose, for example, your major in high school, like very early on, and you either go to math and physics or biology or humanities. And I was good in math and physics. I really enjoyed working on math problems. And also, I think there was this push in the society that it's better if you become engineer or maybe doctor, like because these are like more practical, things that people think you can like make a career with them versus becoming an artist, let's say, or which, like with what I know now, might not be true, especially in this country. People have many other choices to build a successful career. But in Iran, there was, not many choices, and there was also this influence, but also I was very much enjoying doing math and physics and engineering. And I'm very happy that I studied that. I think engineering really helped me to have systemic mind and analytical mind in problem solving. What I do now is not that much about engineering anymore. It's more like high-level business kind of leadership. But back then I was very excited about engineering and working with computers and looking at it as this, fascinating miracle of human ingenuity. So these were the motivations, and I don't regret it. I think I had a lot of fun and learned a lot in this major.
Any interesting, memory from when you're attending the university in Iran?
I made great friendships and we had a lot of fun. As I said, University of Tehran was a very vibrant environment to get involved in a lot of student activities. We had poetry club, like book club. We would do all sorts of things besides studies sometimes. But we had amazing professors too. Like when I look at what I know about, let's say, electrical and computer engineering, I think more than 80% of it I learned in University of Tehran. So really, really amazing. I'm very grateful for what I learned there.
Beautiful. So in 2005, you started your PhD at Stanford. Before that, did you know that you want to pursue your grad school abroad, and especially in Stanford?
No, not really. I was very attached to my family, and my brother before me, he migrated and he went to study his PhD, to do his PhD in the US, and he was always encouraging me to also apply, but I was afraid. And then I remember the last year in college, and back then also not many students were applying really. It's not like today that people plan for their application, from first year of college in Iran, unfortunately. So I remember last year in college, not anyone I know was applying. And I communicated with Harvard University. There was an electrical engineering professor there, and he started talking to me and exploring this idea of giving me a PhD admission with fellowship. But halfway through it, I withdrew my application. Because, one reason was that my dad was not that supportive. He would say, oh, as a girl, you're going to be lonely. And, today there's internet, there's everything on internet. You really don't need to go anywhere. But also I was afraid. So I withdrew my application, and then I started doing master's degree actually in University of Tehran, doing computer engineering. But then, the reality started to really sink in grad school, and it was less fun than undergrad. And I had a hard time working in Iran because, I'm not a very quiet person. I would just voice my opinion when I don't like things. And all these like big organizations, they had this process interview called Gozinesh that you had to prove your loyalty to things that, I would question sometimes. So I eventually decided to apply again, and sometimes life gives you a second chance, and I got few admissions. And with Stanford, I didn't want even to apply. I didn't know anyone who went to Stanford, and it's just such a big name, so I didn't know I will have a chance. But my brother really pushed me to do that, and yeah, I got lucky. I got in.
Wow, that's fascinating to hear. How did you get into bioinformatics?
That was also lucky, I think, consequence. So incident. So when I came to Stanford, I had the admission to do electrical engineering grad studies, and I didn't have any funding. Yeah, so my dad gave me funding for the first quarter, but I had to find an advisor to pay for my tuition, as well as just, having a PhD advisor. So I started talking to all the different types of faculty, and it's really not easy at Stanford. It's not really given that you will find a faculty that's going to support you. It's very competitive. And one of my friends, he told me that there is this thing called Stanford Genome Center, and there's a researcher there, Mostafa Ronaghi, who works with Iranian students as well. So we go there, and I was clueless. I had no idea of biology. The last biology I did was in high school. But Dr. Ronaghi, he went to the whiteboard and talked about we are going to have all these data sources and technologies improving. We can measure all these nuances and details of biological systems like genomes and proteins and RNA. And we need computer scientists to come and make sense out of this data. And I got so excited. I was sold. I just walked out of that meeting and thinking that's what I want to do, because not only it's just so mysterious and, like fascinating to be able to decode life and understand biology, but also the applications. I thought, okay, I can really, focus on improving life quality or curing diseases. That's really meaningful. And that gave me so much motivation that I needed. Yeah, but it took me a while to find an advisor, because there were not many advisors or professors working on that intersection. And the few ones that they didn't need a new student in their lab. So I had to be patient. I worked with several other faculty doing different types of computer analytics type research, and being persistent. Eventually, I landed in Professor Wing Wong, who was chair of statistics department at Stanford, and his research was in biostatistics. So I ended up in his lab, and he had an idea that because my major was electrical engineering, how can we think about not only the algorithms and AI and machine learning, but also how do we implement it in a hardware level? How can we think about the next generation computers or computing platforms that are optimized for this type of processing? So that became my PhD thesis, which was kind of a hardware software co-design optimization for systems biology. And basically, we're trying to figure out the system and the graph that encodes the interaction between proteins and DNA and RNA in the cell, and how this disrupts when an illness such as cancer occurs, and how can we use that information to go and basically intervene and cure diseases.
Wow, fascinating. But so Narges, in less than 5 years, you finished your PhD with a fruitful collaboration between like multiple different departments at Stanford and even UC Berkeley. How did you find yourself as a founder of your first company, Bina?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think being at Stanford University, and nowadays I think entrepreneurship is more accessible in many universities, but it was by learning by example. Yeah, I saw a lot of founders who would come and share their stories of this is how they started their company. And that was very inspiring. I thought, wow, this is possible for me too. This is how they started. They were a student and they could eventually go and build a company. And for me, it was just very exciting learning opportunity, what it takes to build an organization, what it takes to translate research to an actual life-changing product. And when I was in grad school, I did an internship. I think internship is very useful. I really encourage students to, if they can in summer time, go and explore internship opportunities. I did an internship with IBM, which is, a great big company, but my learning was that this is really not for me. I'm not a big company person. So that was useful in making that decision of when I got to that, last year of grad school, I could think of an academic career, which already I have seen how it looks like. I could go to a big company, or I could think about starting an organization myself, which is, has so many aspects. It's not only the science and tech, but you also need to figure out what it takes to build an innovative team, how to raise funding, what business models work. So the learning opportunity, I think, was the main driver for me. But also I'm type of person that I always like to bring people together and start things. Like I've been doing it since primary school, I guess. So they say, entrepreneurs are people who cannot really work for other people. So it's also just not for everyone, but for certain people, it's just more natural, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So Narges, back in 2010, it was very difficult to raise investment for ideas in bioinformatics, since VCs would view it mostly as R&D. How did you overcome this challenge, especially as a female entrepreneur?
Yes, Romina, it was very difficult because, we are talking about 2010, and nowadays we have this whole category of digital health companies, but 2010, we really didn't have this category of companies. And there were few investors who would invest in biotech companies, but in their mind, biotech was drugs or maybe devices. Software was not valued at all. I ended up raising money from the software investors, which we have many more of them in Silicon Valley, and they are a bit more risk-taking, and their terms also are more founder-friendly. And they look at it as an opportunity of, wow, there will be this huge amount of data coming out of DNA sequencing machines, and this is a new application, this is a new vertical of big data or high-performance computing. But they didn't really know anything about how life sciences market work. So I was kind of on my own, really, in this territory of learning, like by doing, basically. My board member and investors didn't know much about this space. So how I raised money, part of it was through connections at Stanford and Iranian community who would say, we can trust this person, their track record shows they can be successful. But eventually to raise the bigger money, I needed to show traction and proof points. So we worked with multiple universities, starting with Stanford Genetics Department as our pilot customers. And that is very important when you are starting a new company, to show traction and validation. The time that pilot customers will spend on your product is much more valuable than the money they might pay you. And that would be a validation, especially when you are in these very technical fields that investors do not have much, they don't know how to evaluate it necessarily. So they want to look at the experts in the field to get comfortable with actually investing. So yeah, we used all of those techniques to raise money.
Wow. So during this time, what were the defining moments in the company and the phases that you went through?
I think besides just, of course, starting the company is takes a lot of effort. When I raised my Series A was when I could actually hire some executives. Before then it was just me and engineers, And it was a little bit hard because I had to be all very low level thinking about the next line of code, as well as very high level thinking about the strategy and sales and everything. So after Series A, we could hire actually managers like VP engineering, head of bioinformatics, head of sales. And that was very helpful for me to be able to take a step back and think bigger. And it was good, I'm sure, for the engineers to have actually a VP engineer working with them versus me. Maybe the other big transition point was with our business model. So when we started our company, we were building this software to analyze, genomic information, and we would sell it to the academic labs and then maybe to some research labs and maybe even some of the facilities inside the pharmaceutical companies. But gradually we realized a bigger opportunity for us to not only sell bioinformatics tools, but position our product as an enterprise software that can address multiple needs of different personas or users in a, say, big research organization or pharmaceutical company. And our value proposition evolved from, okay, we can do things fast, to, oh, we can also have very high quality of data, or we have very easy user interface, or we can manage the information very efficiently and then create collaboration between different researchers. So evolution from like solving one problem to become a whole enterprise software solution that increased our price tag for the product from say $10,000 to $1 million. And similar idea, but a different way to present it. And also that involved really collaboration with our customers to co-develop aspects of it, because we really needed their feedback to know how to build it. That perhaps was a different milestone.
Did this happen gradually, or like at some point you thought something needs to be changed within the company if we want to succeed?
Yeah, it's always, we learn the hard way. Yeah, so we always like, you try something and then you say, okay, this is good, but not good enough, because, our spending is much higher than our revenue. Yeah, so what can we do? Well, and you need to be need driven. You need to understand what is the need of your customer, what is the need of market, and that curiosity will eventually lead you to do the right thing.
Wow. Fascinating. So, but in less than 4 years of starting Bina, you got an acquisition offer from Roche in 2014. What was the decision-making look like? The process of joining forces with Roche instead of growing within?
Yep. So that's always an interesting, I think, decision point for all the entrepreneurs. So, what we were building was the software that we were selling to the life sciences industry. And when you think about the whole DNA sequencing process, starting by you have the machine to do the DNA sequencing, and then you need the chemistry to make it work, and then you need the software and data play a very important role in multiple steps. For example, in the beginning, it can do the image processing, then you convert the raw data to information, then you need the software to actually make sense out of the data in downstream analysis. So there is value for software in every step of genomics analysis. But the lower level software, the more processing information of the genomics data, that software will be very valuable if it is integrated with the hardware and the chemistry. Think about how iPhone or Apple products are disintegrated solutions. They have the software, hardware work very well together. So that is what was happening in the DNA sequencing industry. A lot of consolidation was happening. We have handful number of DNA sequencing companies in the world, and they were buying software companies because they realized software is what actually will unlock the value out of their products. So it became suddenly a competitive situation. Multiple companies wanted to buy Bina. And also I had this other alternative of going and raising money, which was not easy at all. And we got a very good offer from Roche, because Roche in 2014, they decided to build a whole new business unit of DNA sequencing. And they, like many big companies, the way they build is by acquisition. So they went and bought several companies, I think about 6 companies, to build the whole value chain from hardware, software, chemistry, assays, applications. And they chose our company to be the software pillar of that new business unit. So that was a very, very unique opportunity to join forces with the biggest biopharmaceutical company in the world, help them create a whole new organization, and be able to lead the strategy and product development for the AI and software development of their clinical products. So it was really a very unique opportunity and was the right decision for us. So we joined forces with Roche in December 2014, and we became, the software pillar of the new business unit, and we worked together. We grew that organization from few people to more than 1,000 people in the 3 years I was at Roche, and to hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue in 3 years.
Well, actually, I was going to ask you about the experience you had as a vice president and led the efforts on sequencing informatics at Roche.
Yes, that was a very rewarding experience, working for a global corporation of 100,000 people. Roche is an amazing company, very ethical, science-driven organization. They have, of course, 80% of their activities on the pharmaceutical side, building drugs, but we were at the diagnostic side, where we build tests and devices and software for diagnostic labs. Our product, Bina product line, we had to make a big pivot and big change when we got acquired by Roche, because before then, as we were talking about it, we were selling our product to researchers mostly. But at Roche, we had to think about clinical market. So our end user of this product would be pathologists or oncologists, doctors. And it was a much bigger market, but also a much more complex market, because the product needs to get FDA approved. It needs to get reimbursed by the insurance company. So you need to do a lot of evaluation, clinical studies on it. And also just the quality controls and the way you develop the product is different in the clinical setting. So it was a lot of learning for our team, both in terms of how to build this type of products, but also how to integrate it with the other products, because it was not a standalone software always. It was also interacting with the machine or with the tests that Roche, other groups were developing, as well as how to just integrate our company. We were a startup, software tech startup, and Roche is this very old biotech, old school, very different type of organization. So how to integrate these two different cultures, that was not always easy. And that was also a lot of learning, I think, for both sides of the organization.
And how did it go? All these you mentioned, did it happen when you were there?
Yeah, I was, my contract was to stay there for 3 years, and I stayed there for that term. And I helped with developing the whole product strategy, building the organization, integrating Bina fully to Roche. And at the same time, the 6 other companies that Roche bought, they were doing the same thing. So we were collaborating on coming up with that integrated product roadmap, as well as the organization culture and management structure and all of that. So no, I'm very happy with my time there, and we grew the team quite a bit, and we were in charge of developing multiple product lines when I was there, which I think now they are in market everywhere in the world almost.
Wow, fascinating. So Narges, having spent years in academia, startups, and corporations, what made you to join the School of System Change in London? Tell us a little bit of your experience there.
Sure. So what happened is that in 2018, I ended up my 3-year commitment with Roche, and I was at this point, I was very tired back then. I was had worked so hard for so long. But also, more importantly, I had this question in my mind that, okay, what do I want to do next? And of course, the field of genomics is very exciting, but I knew that there might be bigger problems out there. And I felt like I've been just a little bit tunnel vision and so focused for so long on one problem, and I need to take a step back, and I need to learn. I need to go back to that learning and exploration phase before I can think about my next steps. So that is what I did. For a couple of years, I traveled around the world. I spent time in multiple places, and in 2019, I moved to London. I lived there for about a year. And London was amazing because it was a very vibrant ecosystem of intersection of business with social impact. And I was getting just more and more interested to think about big societal problems we are facing, whether it is climate change or public health or increasing inequalities we are seeing in the world, and thinking about how we can address them. Is it through politics? Is it through nonprofits? Or what would be the role of businesses and entrepreneurs in actually going after these big problems? So that is why I also attended the School of System Change. I'm still attending. They have a lot of interesting educational programs, and it's all about how system change happen. How it takes collaboration from many different parts of society, and it's not only about what we do, but there's also this inner dimension. It's about our values, our worldviews, how we relate with each other. And if we cannot shift our worldviews and beliefs, it's hard to think about the systems or outside manifestation of what we do change. So that has been a very useful learning. And I started to think about, okay, what would be the role of entrepreneurs in changing the systems? And the system I care most about was the system that I went through, which is the system of innovation and entrepreneurship. And we are here at Stanford in Silicon Valley. We have a lot of influence on that type of a system. And I felt, this system is kind of broken. It's so much driven by like short-term financial success. Like we celebrate so much about the valuation of a company or how much a founder has raised. And we don't talk as much about what is the impact, what is the positive impact of that company, or are we really solving the problems worth solving, and what would be the consequence of a lot of these new innovations. So we can, of course, profit is very important. Businesses and for-profit ventures are very useful because they have a way to scale and grow and be impactful. But profit for its sake, for the end as an end goal, is not useful. We need to put profit in the service of something bigger, which is purpose. And so School of System Change helped me to think about some of these practices. And I realized people in the nonprofit world are very familiar with those things, but in the business world, we are much less familiar with these practices. So one of the things I'm doing with Emergence Program is to bring system thinking to entrepreneurship. And that really helps entrepreneurs because before they jump into their solution and pitching mode, they can really think about the root causes and all the dynamics beside solving that problem. And it would really save them time in addressing the problems they care about.
But at the core, do you see for-profit and for-purpose entrepreneurship as two different things? Or do you think it's going to be, it needs to be hand in hand?
I think they need to be hand in hand. Yeah, I think that is the arc of history. And I think future businesses and better businesses are the ones that are actually for purpose because they are solving real problems. They are basically aligned with the direction of the world, and they are much more fulfilling businesses. And it's not only about the problem the business is solving, it's also about how that organization is formed, like how decisions are made, how the company is taking care of their employees, and who sits on the board. They're all like, or when the company makes profit, or if it is sold, who is going to make money? Is it fair, for example, that 80% of the exit valuation money goes to a couple of people? Is it fair? Or should it be, more equally distributed? So all this, there are many different aspects in building an organization which is purpose-driven. And it's really not binary that you say a company is only for profit or for purpose. It's really a continuum. And I think all of us are on this continuum, all the businesses out there. And the direction that we see in the society is towards being more purpose-driven, because we are facing really global existential risk, whether it is the pandemic or the climate change or inequalities. So we are all motivated to solve them. You know, as humans, we always wait until like a crisis mode to do something. But it is certainly the direction. These two things are coming together.
So Narges, on that note, where do you see the Emergence Program be in 10 years?
Wow, that's a good question. I like Emergence Program to really grow to many universities. We are starting out of Stanford, of course. This is, you know, where it's kind of my home base. That's where I went to school, but we don't want to stop here. You know, the type of educational programs and the ecosystem we're building outside campus. My vision and goal is to really scale it to many universities and even have a presence outside universities to help students take it even forward after graduation.
Very interesting. Back to some general questions. I'm sure many of our audiences are women in STEM like me. How was your experience being part of the minority group in Iran and even the US?
Yeah, I think when I migrated to US, I really felt the difference. Like, I think the university environment here was much more supportive. You know, in Iran, being a woman in engineering, it was, you know, it was harder to voice your opinion, or you would feel the difference. Yeah, there were barriers in work and in school. But here at Stanford, I didn't feel those barriers in school. I felt I'm being treated as a human, you know, not as a woman. But when I wanted to raise funds, that I'm sure it played a role. You know, it's hard to see directly because people are nice with you. You do fundraising and you go to all these meetings, but they don't write the check for you. Yeah. And when you look at the statistics, I was just looking at it yesterday, it's getting worse actually. So last year, only about 2% of the venture capital money went to all female founding teams. When you include teams that have at least one woman in them, so founding teams that are mixed, it increases to about 14%. So it means more than 85% of venture capital money goes to all male teams. So it's really not, equal level playing fields. And it is hard for women to raise funds and build companies, but it is possible. And yeah, we need to do whatever we can, you know, work harder and use our connections. But at the end of the day, it's not all in our hands. It's a societal problems. I think people who are sitting in the position of power, like venture capitalists, they need to be also really responsible in terms of how they are making their investment decisions.
Seems like from like 10 years ago to now, the problem hasn't been, resolved yet. Just out of curiosity, back in the day, did you try to have someone as a male next to you to get a higher chance for raising money, or was it just you and yourself?
So yeah, like my board members were male and my management team, they were males. But as a CEO, I didn't have a co-founder, you know, it was just myself. I think my board members were helpful to some extent in connecting me to other investors. But yeah, I think it's very good to have a co-founder, whether it is a man or woman, whatever. I think it's much more fun and it's more successful to have a co-founder. But I didn't have one. And, it is not always easy to find the right co-founder. But if you can build a founding team and not doing this thing just on your own, I think the chances of success is higher.
Very interesting. So I believe it's just there's no one solution, like multiple, things needs to happen at the same time, the right time. How beautiful. If you were a student now, which field would you focus on? Generally, what is your approach to finding important problems to work on?
I'm still a student. And I'm always learning by doing. So I'm focused on societal health and planet health. So climate change and the intersection of societal and environmental factors with health. So, this is interesting because I worked for 7 years in the field of genomics, where we talk about how the genetic code, it's so important for our health and illness. But then later I learned that more than 80% of our health is actually determined by social factors. For example, in California, if you look at different zip codes, you might see as high as 25 years life expectancy between different zip codes. So zip code is much more important than genetic code because of all these social factors. Yeah. So that is why I'm doing research and I'm teaching also in this field, and I'm learning with the students. And I think like what problems the students work on, I think it's great to work on science and technology, but it's good to always have an application in mind and be able to connect the innovation you are working on to solving a real world problem. And then ask yourself, whose problem I'm solving? And is this the most important problem I want to dedicate my research and career to solving? So ask me these hard questions, which are not easy at all, but asking these questions will help you to make a more informed decision with your research and career.
So Farzana from the audience is asking, can you talk about your humanitarian work for crowdfunding for children in the Middle East and how you went about it, as well as how you can do it, or the same thing?
Yeah, I'm always interested to think about these alternative ways that we can fund good efforts in the society. So I launched few fundraisers for UNICEF the last few years when Facebook fundraiser was still kind of a new tool. I think now it's used too much, and also people engagement with Facebook is much lower than a few years ago. But yeah, it became quite successful once I did it, I think 2016 for Syrian children in war. And that just grew very quickly, and it was a lucky situation. I started with just inviting my friends, and just the circle grew and grew, and I forgot like how many thousands eventually joined. But I'm doing one fundraiser now for a nonprofit, which is about educating low-income kids with computer science and help them to connect with technology jobs. So I continue working on that, and I just think, like donating $50 to a cause might be just a little expense, less than expense of a day for someone here, but it can, when you put it together, it can really go a long way to change the life of someone somewhere else in the world. So it's one of my interests.
Fascinating. So actually, one of our audiences on the Q&A, Farid is asking, why didn't you hire any female executives?
I did a couple of times. I had a VP of sales, and I also had a VP of marketing at some point. But most of the people I hired were males. It's a good question. When you are running a startup, the salaries you pay are lower, and you are less attractive than big companies for hiring. So it's not that we had many options sometimes, but also I would just look at the candidates we had and would make a decision based on that. One thing we did also, we would have everyone almost in the company interview when we hired someone. So all the engineers and scientists, everyone would feel like really ownership of that decision. So it was not just my decision in terms of people we hired, but yeah, I don't think I was that conscious about the diversity factor. Maybe if I go back, I would have a different way of hiring and building my founding team as well.
Beautiful. So from the audience in the Q&A, Leila, as a fellow founder, saying, how did you get to the point of receiving an acquisition offer from Roche or the other companies you mentioned? How does one start those conversations?
There is not, one way to do that. But I think in the world of business and probably in other fields in life, you work with people and you build relationships, and you're gonna see the result of it, down the road. So if you only care about your business and you don't build those relationships, then it might be too late to think about reaching to people when you are in a moment of, wow, I'm desperate and I need to sell this company. So in terms of Roche, what happened was that there was this other startup called Genia. And I remember I met the founders of Genia in some conferences 2 years before we were sold to Roche. And we just built a relationship with them. They were building the hardware for a very new innovative DNA sequencer, and we were building software, and they needed some advice with how they designed the software and the data processing for their machine. And we spent some time with them and advised them. And there was not even any financial transaction, but we had a good relationship with them. And fast forward in 2014, they were bought by Roche as the main platform of their choice for building Roche DNA sequencer. And when Roche started to think about, okay, who do I buy as a software company to complement you guys? They said, of course, Bina. Bina is amazing. We have worked with them. So this is just one example. And I've seen it just more and more in my career. Than when you really work with people and spend time with them, and you're going to see the results down the road. But you need to be patient, and you need to just, they say fall in love with the problem, not the solution. So you need to just be dedicated to solving that problem from many different aspects, and eventually there will be solutions ahead of you.
Beautiful. One of our audience is asking, if you were to start another company, what would that be?
I have started another company. So Emergence, I hope eventually will grow to be more than just an education platform. I go back to, what problems worth solving. And, as you can look at global problems, you can look at United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, that 17 goals with a lot of subsets of problems worth solving. I think we need to look at intersection of what talent we have, what makes us excited, as well as, what are the problems out there that if we solve them are very impactful. And we don't have any shortage of them. So that's why I'm doing Emergence, because it has this broad vision of addressing multiple of these challenges through time.
Interesting. So Narges, a lot of students have this question of whether to continue their studies in grad school or perhaps just get a master's degree instead of a PhD. Can you please let us know what you think about that?
That's a good question. I think I don't know why students are rushed to graduate and get out there. I think there's so much fun at school. I would just think it's better to stay as long as you can and enjoy your studies and the social life you have in school. Doing a PhD is also very valuable beyond just the research you're doing. It's a practice to come up with a thesis, and you're kind of on your own figuring out how to do the research methodology, and your experiments might fail, and that's going to build character, and that's going to make you be courageous and ready to tackle big problems out after graduation. But it also comes at the cost of not learning a lot of practical skills, like things that like good software development or even management skills. There are things that you will learn at work probably better than learning, in the lab in grad school. But overall, I think staying for the PhD and just using all the opportunities for learning and exploration before you dedicate yourself to a startup or a career, is worth it. If you start a company, you need to at least think about the next 10 years of your life. If you get lucky, you might, exit quicker, but you want to make sure that's the right decision. So taking the time to explore the different options, I think worth it.
Yeah, beautiful. Any advice for young entrepreneurs? What would be the method for finding mentors for students in that medium as well?
I think yes, finding mentors is very important. That's why we started the Emergence Program to find those type of mentors for students. But look at the alumni of your school, and if you are interested in a certain industry, try to connect with people who have worked in that industry. If you have an idea or if you want to pursue a career in a certain field, it's very, very helpful to talk to people who have been there, done that, and get feedback from many people before you actually do it, especially if you're starting a company, because ideas really evolve when you talk to the experts, and sometimes they're all discouraging. So I wouldn't say completely believe them. Believe your intuition above everything else. But definitely finding good mentors is helpful. As I said, having a co-founding team, I think, is very helpful. It's better to go with a team versus solo on this journey. Working with customers, at the end of the day, a startup is just a placeholder to find a business model. And many times the students make this mistake of they just fall in love with their science and technology. Yeah, but it's not about that really. It's all about problem you're solving, and your customer knows the problem. And the sooner you face the reality, the better. So I would say just think about finding those customers and imagine how they're going to use your product and services, and just beg them to use it for free. That's the most important feedback you can get. People, if they don't use their product, if they're not willing to spend time on your product, it shows that you are not really solving a real problem. Your tech might be amazing, but it doesn't matter if it's not solving a real problem. So I think the most important step for any company is to figure out that commercialization, that go-to-market strategy. And this should be prioritized above everything else. But then, yes, you need to raise money, you need to build a team, you need to do all of these things. So as soon as you get progress with a little bit of either of them, then you circle back and you work on the other aspects. But I would prioritize spending time with the customers above everything else.
Yeah, we're running out of time, but we are getting multiple interesting questions. Nima is asking, how do you see the future of biotech or protein design? What extent will AI play and role there?
Yeah, I'm seeing many more companies addressing the AI and the data challenges and the computational challenges of the drug design. The future of biotechnology, I usually look at it from the problem perspective rather than the technology perspective. Of course, technology is improving. We are measuring more things in a faster, cheaper way, and we're going to analyze things in better ways. But I look at it from the perspective of what are the important problems we need to address, such as the burden of chronic disease or infectious disease or pandemics. The healthcare is becoming much more preventive and proactive, and it needs to be more equitable. It needs to be more holistic. So I encourage people to look at the entrepreneurship journey more from the perspective of the problem rather than the technology. And then if you can find a point they meet and marry them, that would be the best.
So now I guess we are at the time, but if you have a couple more minutes that we can stay, it would be perfect. Oh, thank you so much. One from the audience is asking, has becoming an educator changed your career perspective in any way?
I love it. I really love spending time with the students, and I'm learning by teaching. It takes a lot of time. I'm developing a new course now for spring quarter focused on health equity and global health entrepreneurship opportunities. And I'm designing it in a way that is very experimental. So we are bringing all these different mentors and problem advocates and partners to design the course material, and it will be project-based. So it takes a lot of work. It doesn't pay much, but it's very, very rewarding to spend time with students and help them navigate their journeys in creating impactful ventures.
Wow, impressive. Another from the audience is asking, what would your advice be for working in a team that they don't have like a same speed as you?
Well, building a team and building an organization is all about diversity, and everyone bring their own piece to it. So as a leader, we need to create an ecosystem that everyone thrives and be able to appreciate different talent and value that individuals bring. Of course, if someone is not really adding much value, you shouldn't tolerate them if you can, change things. But if you cannot change things, then try to see what other value they are bringing to the team that you might not see if you judge everyone just for their speed of doing things.
We're getting an interesting question asking, it seems that you have reinvented your career a few times from electrical engineering to bioinformatics to entrepreneur and now in education sector. What's the common theme for success then?
I think for me, the common theme is learning and a conviction. I think in every step I had a very strong conviction of what I need to do next. There was this big motivation in terms of the impact, what I learned, and also the opportunity that was in front of me. So I think there are different factors that play here, but I would say learning and growth and leaving creating a positive impact, they were the main drivers in each step.
Beautiful. So last but not least, it would be IC family's question, and it would be, what is your favorite Persian food?
Ghormeh sabzi, hands down.
Obviously, I think no one and no food can beat ghormeh sabzi. Thank you so much, Narges, for sharing your insight and wisdom with us, especially when over time. We're honored to have you today. So this was the third episode of The Tale of Success and the final episode before ending 2021. As with the previous events, the recording will be available on YouTube shortly in our channel. Please stay tuned for upcoming episode in 2022, obviously. And IC family, please join me to thank Narges by turning on your cameras and unmute yourself. And let's go for a round of applause.
Thank you, Narges.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for the conversation.
Thank you.
It was great to have you today.
Yes, thank you very much. I hope it was useful conversation, and your audience, if they have more questions, feel free to email me. You can find me on LinkedIn. And really, I wish the best and success for ISC and all the students involved.
Beautiful. We have an exciting lineup for the next year's speakers, which we will share with you soon, everyone. And have a wonderful day and festive vibes. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all. Take care.
Bye, everyone.